few months back, only one team reigned supreme in Spain.
Real Madrid just cannot keep their hands off the European Cup. They won't let go of it.
However, it's different now. They're faltering. The pressure is mounting on Carlo Ancelotti and his Madrid team, and it's all thanks in huge part to the efforts of this guy. The third German manager in Barcelona's managerial history isn't just a record added to the collection. He's shaken up both Spain and Europe.
I think Flick was just outstanding. To be intense in the first half with Fermin Lopez when they had to be intense.
With Flick at the helm, it's a different Barcelona from what the world was used to. Similar, yes, but they're hungry for success, out to beat and destroy teams. With Hansi Flick, it's about giving everything until the final minute. He trusts his players, has made the most out of an injury-hit squad, and even put Carlo Ancelotti's job at Madrid in the balance. The German tactician is making the game his own with a refined twist to it. The best coaches in the world are the ones who don't just see the game but understand it too. The thing is, to understand the game, something simply can't be taught or said. It's down to experience, and in that category, Hansi Flick has been there. Born on February 24, 1965, Hansi Flick's journey to the game began in the city of Heidelberg, some 340 kilometers away from Munich. He started at the local SV Sandhausen, and by the year he turned 20, he already had the biggest team in German football knocking at his door.
Norwegian defender Erlend Johnsen, elsewhere it's a side rippling with European experience, and still unbeaten in West Germany's Bundesliga this season after 19 games.
Bayern Munich snapped him up. Flick's time at Bayern was a success, a midfielder who was more known for his passing abilities and control of the ball than his goals. Flick managed 104 appearances for Bayern between 1985 and 1990 and scored 5 goals in the process. But his trophy count was the more impressive. He won 4 Bundesliga titles, 1 DFB Pokal title, and even featured in the 1987 European Cup final.
C'est là où va donc se jouer la 32e finale de la Coupe d'Europe des clubs champions. Et le dégagement de João Pinto, c'est pas fini. Dans les 16 mètres, Flick, ballon récupéré par Winklofer. Attention au contre de Foutré. Flick. Kogel maintenant renverse de l'autre côté. Eder qui va pouvoir frapper. Non, il n'a pas voulu frapper.
After Bayern, Flick later represented the likes of FC Köln and Viktoria Bammental, before retiring from the game in the year 2000 due to injury. Though he never played for the German senior team, he did represent the country at the youth level too. But the real story with Flick goes back to his Bayern days.
No me gusta gente que dicen o van al club y dicen tengo un sistema muy bueno. No, lo importante son los jugadores. Si no tienes los jugadores no puedes hacer un sistema. El sistema depende de los jugadores.
Udo Lattek is a name not a lot of people will be familiar with, but one a few Barcelona fans might remember. See, Lattek was the second German to coach Barcelona, but more than that, he coached Flick twice, both at Bayern Munich and FC Köln. Despite retiring early, Flick played with the likes of Lothar Matthäus and Dieter Hunes, as well as getting coached by the legendary Jupp Heynckes. And at the time, the German knew there was more to his football career than just playing on a pitch. He retired at 28, but Flick wasn't done with football. They love him at Viktoria Bammental, but at the time it didn't seem so. Flick began his managerial career in Bammental in 1996, but after suffering relegation in the 1998-99 season, at the end of the year 2000, Flick was ready for the next big step in his career. By 2000, he'd started making his mark with Hoffenheim. They gained promotion to the then 4th tier of German football, but after consecutive failed attempts at promotion, Flick was released from his role as head coach. From everything we've learned about this man so far, it's almost as if he wasn't destined to become a good coach, but the truth is quite the opposite. Despite the not-so-encouraging results in both Hoffenheim and Bammental, Flick had an idea of how his team wanted to play, which we'll see later on. But he also knew he needed to get a more hands-on experience approach from seasoned pros, and the next step he took in his career was a big one. Working under Giovanni Trapattoni at RB Salzburg, Hansi Flick understood how tactics and player relationships worked, but he also realized that under Trapattoni, the defensive approach the Italian took to the games was not how he wanted his team to play. 2006 was big for Flick. He got to learn under Trapattoni and improved his expertise as a coach. But it was in 2008 that we got a glimpse of what the future could potentially hold with Flick as the main man.
The assistant coach of Germany is Hansi Flick.
In the 2008 Euro quarter-final, Joachim Löw was suspended after receiving a red card in the previous game, meaning Flick stood at the dugout. Flick is a patient man, and when explaining his style of play, you'll see this. We're talking about a guy so patient that for 11 years he continued in that assistant role with Germany.
Was man der Mannschaft einfach sagen muss, dass sie nicht gefeitet haben, dass sie sich zurückgekämpft haben in das Spiel. Das ist sehr, sehr positiv und ja, einfach auch haben sie erfahren, dass wenn alles nicht so rund läuft, dass du halt auch beißen musst und genau das haben sie gemacht und von daher.
He was part of the coaching team that won the biggest competition in international football, the World Cup, in 2014. By 2017, it seemed like Flick was ready for a new role. He became the technical director of Hoffenheim, but this appointment only lasted 8 months, initially billed to last for 5. Flick's contract was terminated, but soon enough, he was back in a familiar role. The 2019-20 season was the one where the world would really get to see who Hansi Flick was, away from the shadows of being an assistant. But it didn't start like that. In fact, it started with him being an assistant. He was number 2 to Niko Kovac at the start of the season, but in November 2019, Kovac left the club and Hansi Flick was promoted to the position of interim manager.
Der heutige Tag muss einfach sagen, ja, ging der Blick nach vorne. Ich freue mich auf das, was kommt. Ich kann heute nur sagen, wir haben ein tolles Training gemacht, also bin total.
This 2-0 win against Olympiacos was his first official win as a head coach of the team. And what the world didn't know at the time was that this was the tip of the iceberg.
So ein schöner Spruch.
There is a nice saying which goes, success is only rental, and the rent has to be paid every day. This is something the team shows every day with their attitude on the pitch. They are willing to give 100%.
Ja, den Gegner oder sagen wir 100%.
They won everything. Despite a COVID-hit season, Bayern became only the second team in football history to win 6 trophies in a calendar year. They won the treble, the Champions League, the Bundesliga and DFB Pokal, as well as adding the German Super Cup, UEFA Super Cup and FIFA Club World Cup. We could talk about tactics with Flick, and we will, but the biggest and most important trait of Flick is that he demands the very best out of training sessions.
Man muss wirklich sagen, das Programm, das sie hier durchziehen mussten, war schon ziemlich tough. Und das Trainerteam, wir waren absolut zufrieden, auch mit der Einstellung, mit der Intensität, wie sie einfach auch sehr, sehr konzentriert das Ganze angegangen sind. Also von daher ist das erstmal für uns eine gute Basis und dann die Stimmung in der Mannschaft ist einfach auch gut, wenn sie zufrieden sind, wenn sie wissen, okay, auch das Training, das hat mir gut getan, das bringt mich weiter, die Stimmung allgemein, muss man sagen, ist hervorragend. Wir haben einfach gute Jungs, gute Spieler hier, gute Mentalitäten in der Mannschaft. Deswegen sind wir das jetzt zufrieden.
He mentions the word intensity more times in that interview, and that's what it is with Flick. Each training session has to see all players given maximum on the pitch, and it's not very hard to see why. Going back to his playing career, Flick never really did anything that made him a global name, but he became a rock-solid defensive midfielder in that Bayern team from 1985 to 1990 because of how hard he trained. That was an idea that had stuck with him, and he took it with him into his coaching career. The idea was to build a team that trained hard, and on his part, Flick made sure to appreciate the talent he had around him.
Ich sag mal, vorm Tor eher enorme Gefahr ausstrahlt. Ja, das ist nicht nur seit dieser Saison bekannt, also er ist einfach für mich der weltbeste Mittelstürmer und deswegen bin ich einfach mal gespannt, wie es jetzt auch weitergeht und hoffe natürlich, dass er auch im Spiel gegen Paris trifft.
Whether it was praising Robert Lewandowski, hereby calling him the best striker in the world, or even appreciating both Manuel Neuer and Neymar too,
Ich kann es immer wieder wiederholen, den weltbesten Torhüter. Er hat uns im Spiel gehalten, auch bei Passsituationen. Und ich finde, Paris hat eine exzellente Mannschaft und Neymar ist einfach ein Fußballer, ja, der Spaß macht, der 1 gegen 1 liebt, der normalerweise wirklich auch schwer.
Flick made sure that the players who did exceptionally well alongside the team got the recognition they deserved. That Bayern team was special, and among other results like beating PSG 1-0 in the final, it didn't get any bigger than the day they humiliated Barcelona, which you'll find out about soon. But first, click that subscribe button to Football Historia if you haven't already. A day the football world can never forget. Barcelona with superstars like Lionel Messi, Luis Suarez, Sergio Busquets and Gerard Piqué. All these names still lost 8-2 to Bayern. Flick had built something special. In terms of his tactical approach, Hansi Flick came up with a plan. Anyone who watched Bayern before his arrival in November 2019 would have immediately recognized that they were struggling, even losing 5-1 to Eintracht Frankfurt. Flick immediately came and changed the entire operation. He had an idea of how he wanted his team to play and went upon implementing it. Using the 4-2-3-1 system, Flick immediately began a tactical revolution of the club. With the players at his disposal, it was about attacking the opposition and the spaces in behind. And Flick knew if he wanted to successfully achieve this, he needed his best technical players on the ball for large parts of the game. And with that in mind, he opted to play David Alaba at centre-back, while partnering Joshua Kimmich with Thiago Alcantara in midfield. At first glance, the duo lacked the physicality to compete, but Flick was very well aware of this and had a structure to compete with, another tactic the opponents didn't exactly simply see coming because of how fast it was. Alphonso Davies, Benjamin Pavard and wing play became a major theme with Flick and Bayern. Once these two played high up the pitch, it allowed the wingers to come in more centrally and get involved in the play. This effectively meant that Robert Lewandowski could perform and score the goals he was getting because his attacking teammates played much closer to him, and just behind in midfield, they had tactically gifted players on the ball who were very capable of disrupting and spreading the playing game. At Bayern, Flick was a success, but it didn't last long. The lure was something he simply couldn't resist. After Joachim Löw left the national team post, Flick expressed his desire to become the head coach of the German national team. But looking back at it, it's perhaps a decision he might have chosen not to take if he'd known what was ahead.
Anna, war jetzt was unklar oder sag's bitte. Ich fand generell hatten wir einfach Probleme gegen die Fünferkette, gerade in der zweiten Halbzeit, in der ersten Halbzeit.
As the clip above showed, the players questioned his tactics, almost as if they didn't understand it, and ultimately, it led to Flick becoming the first German manager to be sacked after Germany failed to make it past the group stage of the 2022 World Cup. And so, we're into the present day now, or at least a few months back. Barcelona decided to not continue with Xavi anymore, and after talking about a couple of names, the board decided to go with the man who did the team dirty just 4 years earlier.
Barcelona have announced Hansi Flick as their new head coach. On their website, they say they've reached an agreement for the German to become men's first team coach until the 30th of June 2026. He said he signed a contract earlier today. By bringing Hansi Flick as coach, they say Barcelona have chosen a man well known for his team's high-pressing, intense and daring style of play, which has brought him great success at club level and international level.
But it's safe to say it's a decision that so far has been turning heads. What is Hansi Flick doing right at Barcelona? Well, everything. We're talking about a team that under Xavi was flat. Barcelona became so predictable that it was very easy to judge the team both offensively and defensively. With Flick's arrival, however, this is different. When Barcelona plays now, it's an interesting watch, and that's because of the tactics. We're dealing with a man who's been able to get the best out of all his experience and effectively display them with this Barcelona team. Think about it. At RB Salzburg, while he didn't agree with how the team was based on a defensive structure, he learned about tactics and, more importantly, a player-manager relationship.
Players almost sing from the same hymn sheet, don't they, when it comes to talking about their new managers. We work much harder than before. The new fitness coaches that have come in are really good for us. We work hard and you notice it in games. The team doesn't dip after the 70th or 80th minute. It maintains the same fitness levels. He does have that element of being a sergeant about him, but he's good as gold. When he speaks with players, I'm sure he's like good as gold. I feel free. I think that's what he has transmitted to me, to play without pressure and to do what I know. I feel much more at ease.
Flick does have that stern look about him, and as Pedri mentions, when it comes to managing players and his relationships with them, he's as good as gold. He spent 11 years as an assistant under Joachim Löw in Germany, and what he took from here is something he decided to implement with Barcelona, only because it fits the structure. Ever wondered how Germany won the 2014 World Cup? Well, amongst other things, it was because of the middle. The midfield was Germany's biggest strength in the competition, and at the peak of their powers they showed that controlling the game from the middle of the park with the right technical players was the key to dominating both attacking and defensive-wise. Talk about Flick at Bayern, and it was more of a wing threat with technical players in the middle, but at Barcelona, Flick knew he could very well use this tactic, and that's what he's done. Being a defensive midfielder himself, Flick understands the basics of controlling the game, and he knows fully well that in that position, he needs to have as many numbers as possible, and that's what he's doing. No one attacks more down the middle in La Liga than Barcelona by overloading that area. Flick ensures that the team always have enough numbers in the middle of the pitch to control the game. Players like Pedro, Xavi and Marc Casado, you can expect them to play crucial roles in the team this season because Flick understands just how important they are.
Lamine Yamal, what he's doing this season is really unbelievable. Also the other players. So yeah, we have to continue this performance to show it our fans.
It's the same with Lamine Yamal, a talent Flick knows he has to not only protect but get the best out of. Along with the rest of the team, he's more focused on building a unit, something we saw in his Bayern days, a unit that's capable of going on a giant killing spree if they have to. Beating Bayern Munich and Real Madrid in the space of days, all while scoring 4 goals past each is amazing, but it's just a sign of things to come. I mean, we're dealing with a guy who masterminded an 8-2 defeat over Barcelona back in 2020, and while the whole world was still blown by what had happened, he was already thinking about the next game. Barcelona was always destiny for Flick.
We were invited for a match here in Barcelona. As I said, one day I want to be a coach here, and I reached it.
A goal-getter. As he said in his interview, he always knew he was going to manage at the club one day, and that's why when the opportunity came, he took it, and he's now looking to make his path. He's already drawing plenty of praise with his playing style.
Hansi Flick. He brought Barcelona from the abyss of the dark places.
The dark place when they won the league.
Wait, hold on, it's different.
And more so, has changed Barcelona now. A team that used to rely mainly on technically gifted players has now turned into a fitter team working as a unit. To his end, the players trust him, and that's because they're seeing the results. If you're a Robert Lewandowski, you put blind faith in Flick, and that's because Lewandowski had the best season of his career playing under him. Flick knows there's still a long way to go in the current season, and as such will most likely come across a few blips and bumps as the season progresses. But so far, with the way he's got this current Barcelona team playing, there can only be one way forward, and that's on the up. Now, did I mention Robert Lewandowski? And that's because with the way he's been playing this season, the Polish striker could very well be on his way to replicate the same form he showed in the 2019-20 season, maybe even better. This is interesting considering that just a few months before Flick's arrival, there was serious talk about him leaving the team after a couple of critics believed he wasn't good enough. He's turned the situation around regardless, and has now become the striker La Liga has to fear. Click the next video to find out why.